Hello guys. So today I want to do like a special video. I've done these videos in the past, but I wanted to do something a little different. Uh, wanted to actually talk to you guys about my experience dealing with the manufacturer issues involving recalls and the transmission itself with my DPS 6 transmission on my 2014 Ford Focus. Basically, it had consumed a good 3 years of my life. It took a toll on my mental health. It's taken a toll on my physical health. I'm currently having to see a doctor right now because of stress-related physical health issues. So I want to talk about just like exactly what I went through, what agencies I went through, what I did to try and fight this thing. So we'll start from the beginning. And I've got some of the paperwork here, and we'll go through all of it and we'll start. So this actually started in 2018. There was a recall on the canister purge valve. There was some kind of an issue where it would cause air to suck in, and it actually could cause damage to your fuel tank. So in 2018, I took the car to my local Pep Boys at that time, and they looked at it and said, yeah, you got a recall. A fairly new one. So I take it to Camelback Ford. They basically replaced the purge valve. There's also another recall for the door latches. So they replaced the door latches, they replaced the canister purge valve, and the gas tank. So they did all of that. When I went to pick up the car, I got a surprise. They said you need $1,700 worth of work. You need the bushings replaced, front oil. There's an engine oil leak. Alignment. What else did they say? They just basically said I needed those things, and they gave me a bill for like $1,700 when all I needed was a recall. So I denied the recall repair. While I was waiting in the service center to get the car ready, I got the keys, and one of the people from the dealership lot started talking to me, making small talk. And I was asking him, I thought maybe he was a manager or something. I asked him, why is their repair bill so high? And this is like a total scam. This guy says, well, have you thought about trading in your car? And that's when I said, I gotta leave. So I walked out, I go to my car, and the guy's literally following me out to my car. So I basically turned over to him and I said, look, I'm not interested. So I basically followed me out to my car, pushed him away, said, I'm not interested. So after all of that, a few days later, the check engine light comes on the car again. I take it to the Pep Boys because I don't trust that Ford dealership. And the manager at the time, his name was Justin Bircher. He gets the car on a lift, looks at it, and he says, I don't know what Ford did, but they left an evap line loose. So he takes me back into the bay. He shows me underneath the car where the line was intentionally left loose. They didn't even charge me to do the repair on that line. There was no charge from Pep Boys. They just warranted it. The mechanic even said when I was back there, when I was asking Justin how much they were going to charge me, they said, we're not going to charge you anything. And the mechanic says, I have too much of my grandfather in me. So you know right there that Ford did something dirty. So I took that all the way to the Better Business Bureau. And this was one of the few times that they actually acted, and they forwarded the complaint to their Automotive Repair Advisory Board. And they did say, and they agreed that Ford had left the evap line loose. However, because I didn't take the car back, they didn't take any further action. But I mean, come on. Would you take your vehicle back to a shop that damaged it? No. So they replaced the canister purge valve. That actually failed for a second time right before the transmission went bad. So I had to have that replaced again a few years later after looking at my paperwork and everything. So now let's get to the transmission issue. So I'm driving a car, literally has under 100,000 miles. So it's like 99,000. And I get a check engine light, and it's for a transmission code. So I take it to my local Pep Boys. I just wanted them to see if the fluid was low and see if they could give me a diag. He looks at it and says, yeah, we can't do any. It's a transmission issue. You'll have to take it to the dealer. I thought maybe the car was still under warranty at that time because it had under 100,000 miles. And then after doing my research, I realized that Ford had all of these issues going on with the transmissions on these cars. So, being at that time, I thought the car was under warranty, so I took it over to the nearest dealership because it was literally at 99,900 something miles. So I take it over to Chapman Ford. Now understand that Camelback Ford said that my front control arm bushings were bad. So I'm going to get that in a minute. So I take it over to Chapman. They look at it. They have the car there for a day. They tell me that I have a clutch, 2 shift actuators, and the clutch, 2 shift actuators. They also said I needed a tune-up on the car, and they wanted to quote me just to do the clutch. So we'll look here, the invoice, $25.99, so $2,600 minus the $150 diag fee, and then the total amount of work that they wanted to charge me was $38.02. That was for the tune-up and everything. They said, and I spoke with Robert, I think his name was Robert Rose, the service manager. He said that the control arm bushings were fine. They said there might have been a little dry cracking, but they weren't shot like what the dealership in Camelback said. So this is where I reach out to Ford customer service. This is the first thing that I do in this quest to resolve the DPS 6 issue. So I reach out to them on Facebook, and I'm doing research, and I'm starting to hear the horror stories about the DPS 6 transmission. If you watch my other video, that explains everything, but they knew about the problem with the transmissions. They sold them to people anyways. And I was warned of this by a coworker. He had this happen to him on 2 separate occasions, and he thought I would be okay, but at 99,000 miles, I'm having to have a clutch replaced on a automatic transmission. This car is a dual clutch, so it's a automatic, but it operates sort of like a manual. But if you watch my other video, you'll understand that. So I'm going back and forth with Ford. I go through their customer service. Then their manager reaches out. And on top of that, the service department also puts in requests for repair assistance through Ford. Each one of those repair assistance requests were denied. Eventually, I communicated with the customer service manager through Ford, Catherine Donnelly. I think I messaged her hundreds of times. But basically, after fighting her, they agreed to a 50% discount on this. And then during this time too, Better Business Bureau complaints, Attorney General, these are the first ones. So first round of complaints. So they agree. They said, we'll give you a 50% discount on the repairs. So the car's in the shop for 2 days. I go in to pay for it. So it should have been $1,080. So if you look at the $2,500, they had given me a quote with the discount for $1,080. So when I go in to actually pay for it, they're only charging me $760. Now, why is that? I don't even know if I've got the... Yeah, everything here says it's under warranty. Just wanted to see if we have... Because I've got 4 invoices here. Yeah, I don't have the one where it shows a charge, but they did... this is the receipt right here. Let's take a look. So... this was the first repair. Replace clutch and actuator per Ford. Clutch assembly. They also replaced the oil seal. The shift actuator J and shift actuator K. Remove transmission and remove clutch and both A forks. Replace and installed both actuators. Performed adaptive relearn. Road tested the vehicle. Yada yada yada. Shift's fine. Etc. 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 So out the door I paid $760. Don't know why. They didn't give me a clear explanation on that. So now I have the car. I'm driving it, and I end up fighting them too over the diagnostic fee. I put numerous reviews on Yelp about it, and they refunded that. So this is in April. So in August, I'm driving the car and I make a left turn and the car starts to not want to accelerate. Check engine light comes on. I literally go to AutoZone and I've got like 4 or 5 codes here in the car. P072E, P0285E, P2832, P287B, P027E. 4 or 5 trouble codes just on the transmission alone. So I go back to the service department, and like I said, I have Attorney General complaints, second round of Attorney General complaints. I go to them each time. Let me show you what they tell you. So while all this is going on, the Ford responds to the Attorney General on the bottom here. They respond to the Attorney General. And this is what they tell you each time. They basically tell you that he may be part of a class action settlement. And we advise to seek further assistance at FordTransmissionSettlement.com. They don't address the claims with the transmission. They don't want to offer a counter resolution. They just tell you to go to FordTransmissionSettlement.com. It's almost like their scapegoat. So I had filed, and I actually know the guy at the Attorney General because I communicated. His name's Mila, and Mila said that I had filed over 8 complaints just with their office alone. And I pressed him on it. Basically, what the Attorney General's office does, their Consumer Complaints Department, is they investigate cases of fraud. So obviously, when a company sells a vehicle knowing that there's an issue with the transmission, that could be considered consumer fraud. Now, if you watch Ford Transmission Settlement, my Ford Transmission Settlement video, you'll know that because I was in that lawsuit, this becomes a lemon law issue. So basically, Ford just stonewalls the Attorney General's office here, and they say, go to the Ford Transmission Settlement's website. So now we have the car in the shop a second time, and I'm at work, I'm working night shifts at Macy's, and they're telling me I have to get an Uber and everything, and they're like, oh, we're busy, it's just going to take a couple of days. And then I'm back and forth with Robert Rose, and he says, well, the technician looked at it, and it seems like there's an internal failure in the case. In that place, it needs to be replaced. The case meaning the entire transmission itself. So then I'm back and forth arguing with him again. Following day, he did an adaptive relearn. So this is the second fault. Automatic transition concern, customer states check engine light. Ran ECTS, found 4 DTS P0217, blah, 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 blah. Followed pinpoint test for shift fork, no electrical fault, blah, 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 blah. They basically did some kind of software thing. They warrantied out the work because they didn't do any parts or anything like that. So now while the car's at the dealership, this is the second time. So I get the car back after 2 days. Guy named Tony brings it over. I thought he was a mechanic based on his outfit and everything. He's got the patch, he's got the polo, looks like a mechanic. He comes out and he drops off the car and he says, oh, I fixed your front bumper. I washed your car. Please put in a good review for me. And it's his accent. I was like, okay. I figured he was a mechanic and everything. So, literally, a week later goes by, and I look at the work, and, the bumper. So let me rewind. Why did Tony work on the bumper? So I was in a car accident a few months after the transmission repair, and the bumper was hanging down. I had it attached with zip ties because I didn't want it to drag down and fall off. But what Tony did was he just popped the bumper back in place. So I'll get to that with the third transmission repair, because I literally had to have an Uber. My boss had to pay for an Uber to pick me up and get me to work for 2 days, to and from, at night. So Tony fixes the bumper. We'll get to him in a little bit. So a week later, check engine light comes on again. Customer states that when leaving the traffic light, the check engine came on. Road tested and found transmission has severe shudder on acceleration. Transmission is slipping. Blah, 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 blah. That's the diagnostic here. They replaced the transmission control module. Here it is. So there's so much paperwork. So they replaced the transmission control module. The paperwork I showed you there was the initial diagnostic. Transmission failure again. Check engine light. P025285E. And that was the only code that popped up. Yada, yada, yada. It was a transmission control module. Now, the transmission control module was covered under warranty. You have 150,000 miles on a TCM. So that was replaced. No charge. They had actually, and there's a satisfaction letter in here. So they sent numerous satisfaction numbers. This is the one for the TCM. So they extended it because of all the things that were going on with the transmission. They extended that warranty. So now the cars, they don't even mess around this time. The dealership sends somebody out with a rental car They take my car, drive it up to the dealership, and they have this thing fixed in a couple hours, the control module replaced. So the service advisor calls me, says the car's done, Tony's bringing it to you now. Now, it should only take an hour to get from the dealership to my house, no more than an hour. So an hour and a half goes by, I text the service advisor, and the service advisor doesn't know. So Tony gets back with the car nearly 2 hours after the fact, drops it off. I get the car the next day, drive it, and I notice that there's damage to the bumper that wasn't there. On the seams, on the end, it's burned off. And the kicker is that Tony fixed the bumper again because it fell off because he did not properly put it on the vehicle. Those seams that were holding the bumper on were bad. So he must have drove it on the freeway. It broke off. It melted off pieces of the plastic and used a machine screw to bolt it into the car. So now we have not only a transmission issue, but this issue. And that dragged on for a month and a half, and I settled with them for $1,100, which is what it would have cost to replace that entire bumper. So that was going on. Meanwhile, now remember, I had to pay $760 to have the clutch done. Why it was $760, I don't know. But I continued to fight with Miss Donnelly about that. She adamantly refused. She said, we're not doing anything further. Nope, 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 nope. And I kept pressing this. Meanwhile, the Ford transmission settlement, not going to go into complete details about it, but they did what was called a customer satisfaction program. They increased the warranty on it to 7 years, 100,000 miles. And if you had already had a clutch replaced and you paid out of pocket, you got your money back. So when I had the second repair happen, Miss Donnelly begrudgingly said, we'll cover that $760 as a one-time clutch replacement. So after fighting nearly a year over this, they finally paid for everything. So a few weeks after I got the car back, the vehicle was starting to act worse than it did before. It was literally shuddering every time you would go from a stop to acceleration, which is typical with these transmissions. Only this time it was noticeable. The car would go do-do-do-do-do-do-do when you go from a stop to, and the car would shake. And it was just like an inconvenience to me. And this went on for 2 years. So, and on top of that, I had most of the recommended maintenance done. I had a tune-up, so I had the coolant changed, spark plugs, and a fuel service done. I did that at the Pep Boys location that did the previous work. So they did all of that. And I had my oil changes every 3,000 to 5,000 miles for the most part. So I was doing all of the maintenance on the car. But the car was still wanting to shudder and accelerate. So now I'm fighting them on this. I want them to buy back the car or at least replace the transmission. So now let's talk about all of the agencies I went through. So the Better Business Bureau and the Attorney General's office, I submitted probably 8+ complaints to each one of them. And as you had seen, they pretty much responded in the same way. Go to Ford Transmission Settlements website, yada, yada, yada. So that was a done deal. So what was my next option? Well, Ford is headquartered in Michigan. So why not reach out to the Michigan attorney's office? After all, they're the ones that are investigating all of this stuff with Ford. So I filed a complaint through Dan and Nasser's office in the Michigan Attorney General's office. In 2020, they reached out to Ford Ford did not respond to them. I called the Attorney General's office there again. I spoke with somebody. They sent out another complaint. Ford didn't respond to them. So then, what did I do next? So then I filed complaints with the National Highway Transportation Safety Board. They had actually looked into this because they've received millions of complaints. However, they have not issued a recall because they deem it not a safety issue. Once again, I discussed that on my other video. So I filed, complaints for each transmission issue I had. So it was like 3 or 4 complaints with the NHTSB. That went nowhere. I literally blasted Miss Donnelly's email every single day. I called her, left her voicemails. Nothing. I could not get her to do anything. I went through Ford customer service again. They sat there, looked at them. Oh, you're not eligible for this. You can't do that. You can't do this. Yada, yada, yada. I also tried to obtain an attorney. Now, if you read my article about Ken Stern, I reached out to him. He wasn't much help. He just clarified he's not part of one of the attorneys handling Ford transmission settlement. And he told me that during that time the case may be vacated. However, it wasn't. So that was it with him. Ken, if you watch my video, Ken Stern, he's got his own separate class suit. So that went nowhere. Then I actually tried to retain an attorney, a lemon law attorney, and they would not represent me because they said I was part of the class action suit because I was automatically opted in. Once again, watch my previous video for that. So tried to retain an attorney, couldn't do that. You can't get anybody. So then I went to Kirsten Sinema's office, our senator. I think during that year there was an election year, and I reached out to her office. She responded back saying that they don't handle complaints involving private businesses. So that went nowhere. Then I went to the local media. There was a news special with Gary Harper, 3 on Your Side. Same thing. Woman had pretty much verbatim issues that I had. She needed a clutch. She needed actuators done. Her car had 92,000 miles on it. Her car, though, for that year was a 2016. It was under recall. They wouldn't cover the recall because it was 4 months outside of that recall. Gary Harper reached out to them personally, and Ford basically said, oh, we'll look at it, but she'll have to pay to have it looked at. So I figured, why not reach out to Gary Harper? I reached out to him, no response. Then I went to ABC 15. They let Joe know. They actually reached out to me and they said, well, we can't take your complaint because the Attorney General's office and the class action lawsuit, we just don't handle that stuff. Yada, yada, yada. All right. So then I went to Call 12 for Action with Channel 12, and I did get help from them. And the reason I got help was because my mother, before she passed away, used to work for them as a volunteer. So the gentleman that assisted me, his name was Maury, he had attempted to reach out to Miss Donnelly. I sent him over all of the documentation. He reached out to her on my behalf. He told me, no surprise, she's not talking to me. He basically said, there's nothing more you can do. It's not going to go anywhere. He said he's been doing this for years. So that ended there. So now I even reached out to Kim Mayfield, the person on who was in with Gary Harper's news article, and I told her, I said, you should file a complaint with the Attorney General's office. And this is one thing that Mila said from the Attorney General's office. He said that usually it takes numerous complaints before they can act, because, Mila looked into it and everything. They said, well, because of the class action suit, there's not much we can do. We haven't gotten enough complaints on it, because he consulted the Attorney General office attorneys. He had told me that. And so Mila from the AZ Attorney General's office, and Mila's just a person who handles these complaints and forwards the paperwork over to the businesses. So I reached out to Mayfield and I said, you should file a complaint with the Attorney General's office. And I didn't hear back from her. Told her my story. I figured I'd try to help, but didn't hear back from her. I went on to Facebook pages for this specific thing, for transmission problems. There are groups, and I had suggested that to people on there. Facebook actually went and flagged my comments, saying don't put these comments up anymore for whatever reason. And it may have led to my Facebook account getting deleted. I don't know. But how is that misinformation telling somebody to go to a state agency? That's not misinformation. But, that went nowhere. Even though the admin liked my comments. The person who created the page hit the like button on my comment. It's just crazy with social media. But that went nowhere. So then, this all went on. This had consumed my life for 2 years. I continued to drive the car. In June of 2021, so we're almost on a year since the Ford issue the repair issue started, a year from the last failure. I was driving the car home and I got the transmission overheat notification on there, pull over to the side. So the transmission was starting to overheat, not the engine, but the transmission. Eventually the transmission caused the engine to overheat. So I barely got the car home. It was wanting to not accelerate. So that's when it broke down, and it sat in the garage for 7 months. And meanwhile, I was still fighting all of this. Now let's talk about the lawyers. So if you watch my transmission settlement video, there's numerous attorneys that handle the Ford transmission settlement. And I got one of these postcards. I didn't even realize, and that's a sneaky thing, they send them out. I didn't even realize I got one. But there are a group of lawyers that are part of this lawsuit, and Capstone Law is one of them. So during that time, I also reached out to Capstone Law. I told them my situation. I messaged Ryan Wu directly, and he's the lead attorney on this. And he had the audacity, now he's going to email me back. He forwards it to his senior counsel, Teresa Carroll, and basically Teresa Carroll bullshits me. She says, oh, we can't help you here. You need to go to transmission settlements page. So that went nowhere. I filed the Better Business Bureau complaint against Capstone Law. They failed to respond to it, and it resulted in a lowering of their BBB rating. They didn't even respond to my complaint. I've posted Yelp reviews. I've blasted their Facebook page with comments. Nothing. So, and this eventually, I filed the complaint with the California State Bar against Ryan Wu, Anthony Castile, Teresa Carroll. And I did primarily Ryan Wu on perjury, because he lied to 3 district court judges saying that the settlement was going to be this amount. In reality, it wasn't. So I submitted a complaint after the 4th transmission failure. So before we go into the state bar complaint, because this was after, as a last-ditch effort, I did go to Ford Transmission Settlement's website You have to understand you couldn't file a claim because it was an appeal for a year and a half. So this is the Ford transmission settlement response. I submitted it before the deadline in August of 2020, and I didn't get a response until 2022. So 2 years. I got no assistance for hardware replacement, no buyback opportunity, and no software flash. I got no compensation, and it took them 2 years to get back to me. So that's when I initiated the state bar complaint. They go around and they tell the state bar that, oh, we told him that we couldn't help him and he wasn't eligible for any assistance. That's not true. I showed the person who's handling this at the state bar that Teresa Carroll did not address my transmission settlement claims, that she only referred me to Ford Transmission Settlement's website. I followed back. I gave the investigating bar attorney that paperwork. That's still pending, but I think I submitted 2 complaints to the state bar. But this has consumed the last 2.5, 3 years of my life. It has bankrupted me because I've been struggling to find a reliable vehicle. I've had some help, but it's just been a struggle. I ended up selling the car for complete loss. I bought the car for $12,996, almost $13,000. And I sold it for $1,450, which is, I didn't even break even. I literally broke even because I had $1,500 of repair on it before it broke down. A new set of tires, canister purge valve, canister solenoid, the coolant reservoir, brake fluids, and then I had a complimentary brake pad replacement on the car. So that all equated to and not only that, I replaced the battery 3 times on the car in the span of a year. So it came out to $1,500 in repairs, but it basically consumed my life. I couldn't get to work and things like that over the summer. It prevented me from looking for work, and the emotional stress behind it. They refused to do anything, and then on top of that, while all this is going on, I had the door latches done. There was a recall on the recall because they didn't replace the correct latches. How is that even possible? You have a recall for door latches, then you get another recall notice on the recall. How is that even possible? But people don't realize this, and this is just my story. I've spent the last 2 years trying to fight this thing. It went nowhere. I reached out to every single attorney. There were 2 other law firms too that I reached out to. I think one's name's George Zimmerman. They're all on all the lawyers that you saw on Ford Transmission Settlement pages, the 3 firms, I reached out to them. Capstone Law was the only one that responded. The other 2 lawyers that were separate firms did not respond to my inquiries. But yeah, blasted them for years, and it really went nowhere. Took a complete loss on it, broke down my mental health. It's causing me physical health problems right now. I'm not going to elaborate to that, but it's been causing me adverse health effects. And people just don't realize it's you have a car, it's supposed to last 10 or 15 years, and this car didn't even get to 100,000 miles. It had 154,000 on it, but the transmission went out at 100,000 miles. So it could not fix it. And as you could see, one transmission repair, $2,600. It's just crazy. But literally consumed my life. I went to 10 different agencies. I mean, hundreds of emails, hundreds of phone calls. It got nowhere. And that's just what Ford has been doing to people. They've been fighting this, and they know they can. They know they can't. And the government doesn't do anything because they champion behind them because they're an American business. You don't hear anything about Ken Stearns' lawsuit. You don't hear anything about the DOJ investigation that was done. It's all just been swept under the rug. They had this little appeal, and it was a win-win for Ford and the attorneys, but the consumers like us are the ones that get screwed. We have no repercussion. I have no lemon law protection because the lemon law in Arizona is like 2 years, 24,000 miles, and you have to have like X amount of repairs. So there's no way. And even if I had addressed this, because I was noticing this too, I worked at Macy's in the mall, and the garage is enclosed. So we have like an enclosed parking structure, and I'd hear like a little rattle when I would accelerate. But if I had taken it into a dealership, even like 2014 or 2015, 2016, when the car had 40, 50,000 miles on it, they would have said, there's nothing wrong with your car. It's just the way that it drives. I made that argument to them, but they adamantly refused to do anything past what was under warranty, and that was their excuse. Oh, your car's out of warranty. Well, the vast majority of people that have transmission problems with these cars, their vehicles are out of the manufacturer's warranty, which was 3 years, 36,000 miles on it. So that's the story. That's the back end story, literally about what I have done to try and remedy this solution. It was basically a big loss, seeing that car, first brand new car, on that tow truck going to the salvage yard. And I was upset that day. But first brand new car was supposed to last 10 or 15 years, but took away years of my life. But that's the story.